Welcome back. African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, under the auspices of the United Republic of Tanzania, held an inaugural AfCFTA conference on women and youth in trade from the 12th to the 14th of September 2022 in Dar es Salaam. Now, Maria Immanuel, who is a technical advisor at the Agricultural Trade Forum, joins us with more details on this. Good morning, Maria, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning, Namibia.
How was your flight?
My flight was good. You know, in Africa, you have a lot of stops. So you do Dar es Salaam into Addis Windhoek, but it was lovely.
Okay, and you got back yesterday.
I got back yesterday, yes.
Talk to us about your experience at the conference.
Your experience is wonderful. So for the first time, the AfCFTA Secretariat organizing this conference on women and youth, particularly to have the women and youth in the room to discuss issues around how to include women and youth in the AfCFTA agreement. As you know, that obviously we have been participating, Namibia, as part of very actively negotiations, and we want to also make sure that we unlock opportunities that are targeting women, as there are dynamics when it comes to the, you know, the general international trade, their participation in mostly in informal sector, and you know, we derive policies from formal data. So you find that you might have a gender bias within your policy formulation, not necessarily that the agreements only target men, but they target corporations that are formal, and those are driven mostly by men. So women being concentrated in the informal sector, and finding those datas over time, and speaking about how do we make sure we don't leave women and young people when it comes to this agreement implementation. So this is a historical conference for the first time that the AfCFTA put together, and brought the target group in the room to discuss opportunities, challenges, and solutions that could be part of the protocol that is now part of the agreement. Experience was great. Tanzania is beautiful. People are very positive. They love their president, and they are very confident in the governance initiatives that is coming from their government. I think that's one of you know, you always have this perspective change. So that would be the first one. They speak Swahili. The president delivers the remarks in Swahili. Did you pick up a few words here and there? Yeah, of course, jambo here, you know, malaika, you know, nakupenda. I'm just deriving from the music that we listen to. Here and there. But very, very positive, amazing, different people. So yeah, it was really good. All right, and you're the only one that represented Namibia at the conference? No, we were a delegation of 5. So the Namibian delegation headed by the Deputy Minister of Industrialization and Trade, Honorable Verna Senimbo. So she delivered a statement in terms of how we see the women and youth participation from a Namibian perspective. So she's the head of delegation. From me, from the Namibia Agricultural Trade Forum, as a woman policy maker, and then of course a youth entrepreneur, as well as a older woman entrepreneur. So that was the delegation. Yes, invited by the AfCFTA. All right, so they were looking at older women and younger women in business. Yes, as well as youth, so youth is cross-cutting. Okay, so it was under the theme Women and Youth, the engine of AfCFTA trade in Africa. So what is it essential for young women to be included in businesses? Yeah, so when we talk about cross-border trade, and it was very interesting, women were sharing their experience, and they would say, I used to be in informal trade, so I used to move products at the border from one country to another. But informal trade means I was smuggling the product, because I am not declaring the products at the customs. And when you declare, of course, there are also expectation and applicable tax that you need to pay, right? But more importantly, also to derive the data that moves. So you formalize it, but now because of issues that we're talking about, for instance, understanding the agreement, having the information on the compliance of the agreement, you find that if you come at the border and you are sent away, or you are not, you know, not complying, and they say, no, you cannot come in because you don't have this document, you don't have that, you go home, but tomorrow maybe you cross the border, but you don't cross there, So you're smuggling the products. So that that informal trade of coming in across the border from one country, the trade is happening. We know that if you're at Toshikango and Angola, we know if you go there, the reality is that people are coming in and out, and they have products they want to move between that. So those are some of the challenges. So now formalizing them, making them understand the agreement, and also helping them understand the trade compliance checklist that you need, but also on how that must first be incorporated in the agreement before you come to the border. Because that's actually the point of how do you get yourself ready, so that when you then target the agreement, you know exactly what are the compliance lists. So those are the technical, practical issues, and trying to see how do we make sure we don't leave women who by 60 to 70% on the continent are trading in the informal cross-border trade, and unlocking that huge opportunity. And when it comes to youth, really is an issue of high unemployment and access to economic opportunities. And when we talk about the digital economy, you know, we are tech savvy, we are educated, you know, we are able to read faster and understand. So how do we derive, or how do we interpret these opportunities for them to probably come up with solutions that address the continent issues and boost the intra-Africa trade, and that's the objective of the agreement.
All right. So how do you think, what were some of the proposals raised when it comes to developing policies, you know, like the ones you mentioned in the proposal for women and youth, the youth in trade?
So, I mean, challenges are a lot.
Yes.
And everybody's standing up and giving their input from a challenge point of view. But the conference also encouraged, obviously, the point is to derive solutions. So the key ones, the first one that we look at, for instance, when it comes to supporting women and youth in trade, is financial inclusion, access to financial instruments for them to actually, you know, boost their expansion. And it really comes from, again, production level, because when we talk about trading goods, you are able to be manufacturing those goods at the standard that is required for you to export it. So financial inclusion, and the other one is capacity building. Again, trade is very technical, so we want to make sure that people understand the agreement, and they have access to the information. So again, access to the information. Also coming out a lot is market intelligence. So where are the opportunities? What does the data say? So that these are the constant, you know, when you're in business, you need market intelligence constantly, that is, you know, making you do informed decisions. So those are the issues, and then also sensitive issues like abuse at the border. So
what sort of abuse are we talking about?
So
here?
I mean, just the engagement. You know, when it comes to institutional arrangement, when it comes to trade facilitation. So how do we facilitate trade in a manner that also addresses issues that there are cases of women will tell you that there will be, you know, abuse of different abuse, at the border customs, how we hold their hands to move. And just because you are not really trade compliant, and the empowerment, because there's a livelihood part of it, a bigger part of livelihood at the cross border. And that's the first one that you are picking up, and that's why it's informal, because you are moving to go sell for livelihood to come. But how do you see that opportunity and try to facilitate trade and make them safe? You know, issues of where you are losing your products, where you are harassed. Those are things that are coming out also bigger in the room, becoming a bigger elephant in the room. Issue of corruption, we don't talk enough about that, especially when we want to address issues of corruption. So when you are not trade compliant, you are prone to all sorts of things that you start engaging in, because you are not formal, you are not in the light. And those things are coming out, and we want to see how we can address them by, especially from a government point of view, institutional arrangement. So we need trade facilitation mechanisms to facilitate trade.
Right.
So yeah.
So how do you think we can strengthen the ties within African countries in order to facilitate the trade? Yeah,
so partnership, definitely. I mean, the first thing is trade is not always about export. So the opportunities are also importing materials into production processes. But the first thing we talk about is having partnership over the border. So if you want to move your product into Angola, the feasible way is to have a partner in Angola who's a possible buyer or a distributor. So to enable those connections, we want to increase more B2Bs, business to business engagements. We want to increase obviously more trade fairs. The AfCFTA hosts trade fairs to bring all African manufacturers together. And we want to make sure that it's not just once off. We want those constant up and down. When we identify the market opportunities, we must go there and see the opportunities to create a partnership on the ground and boost that, and then of course missions, where I know with Namibia we have just deployed under the NIPDB trade and investment mission, where we have officials in these strategic countries that are supposed to promote and connect us like that. So those linkages that are already there in terms of institutional arrangement, we need to make sure that they speak to the realities of the manufacturers, of the business community, and more importantly to ease the ease of doing business. Okay. Because I mean, you have to be competitive when you enter the next market. So to do so, there's a lot of costs that are within the business environment, more so that needs facilitation from a government point of view, a private sector point of view. So bringing the two together, but also making sure that they speak to the different level. The SME segment, the corporations, the issues are different, and being more specific, women issues, youth issues. So that's really the point. Yeah.
All right. People say it's a man's world when it comes to business. Yeah. Do you think women are having so many issues and challenges when it comes to being in the business world?
I think the first thing is probably we are too much concentrated at a small level, and we need to upscale women to become huge corporations. A lot of women's business, they start from passion. They start from home, naturally, because of where how we integrate in society. A man generally starts a business from a bigger vision. Yeah. And it also comes from, and the vice president of Liberia, she was very inspirational in her remarks, because her first remarks, she started saying, when we talk about empowerment of women and men, we must first start from home. The boy is so much given freedom and empowerment when they are growing up. That's why they can be able to go for their dreams. So for a woman, the girls is put so much restriction on how they must grow up, so many compliance. So now you come here and they say fly, but I was not taught how to fly, to think big. So it's that type of narratives, and we need to change that so that we allow girls to also dream big and make sure that they can set up a corporation that can be big and employ more people. So they start with passion, something that they know, and they just sort of continue to be small, and we want to make sure that they can be able to expand and become also big executive in the business world. So definitely that shift is going. We have more women businesses on the continent than elsewhere. In Namibia, in my personal engagement, I see more women coming to business engagements, very much interested, and they are the most that are also doing more products. Yeah, so when we talk about manufacturing, agro-processing, cosmetics, we have more women concentrating in there. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to then give them more support, to get them expansion, to get them bigger, so they can also rule the world in terms of business.
Okay. Yeah. Now the conference featured, different panelists, including heads of states, politicians, business leaders across the continent. What was one of the languages that the panels spoke in terms of empowering young women?
Yeah, again, my first inspiration was really from the Vice President of Liberia. Okay. First, she started at that level, and then I think the bigger thing also that came out was how we need to organize the women and youth and organize them in business associations. Yeah, because interventions are better designs in a group, because the challenges are cross-cutting. And even the approach, when you're approaching government for interventions, you come as a business network, and trying to have more of those women networks in terms of how we must grow. The general empowerment, just to go for what we want. So the room was really filled of powerful women as well. the former president of Malawi, Joyce Banda, is a big businesswoman and sharing what she's currently doing on the continent in terms of financing, coming up with financial models that addresses women and youth businesses. And then, of course, language, you mean, of course, not language, but language in terms of the views, right?
Yes,
okay,
views
no,
the same, yeah.
Right. Because I was about to answer you to say, also in terms of language, there was a lot of Swahili in the language.
I was afraid you'll speak Swahili to me right now.
No, and then, but interestingly, language is also a big thing.
Yeah.
Because language is a big part of business. And one of the room we sat in, we had to do French and English, right? But we didn't have a French interpreter. And the colleagues from the French countries were not really happy, that they felt excluded, that, you know, the conversation is going on in English. So there was a bit of drama that erupted, where they walked out a bit, say, no, we cannot continue. Even though they understand, but of course they feel that they must be represented. So the issue of language, before I conclude with what you mean, is also big. And Africa speaking about how do we also come to a point where we promote a language like Swahili to represent us as Africans.
Yes.
Now we are fighting between English and French, and we are trying to communicate and push business on the continent, and that is already a big barrier in terms of how it exists on the continent. So I thought that was interesting.
All right.
Yeah, but of course the language was very positive. There was also, I think, a key thing that came out, and that is procurement, government procurement. And the president of Tanzania, in her remarks, she actually pledged 40%. She will reserve 40% of public procurement to women businesses and youth. And that was a game-changing coming from a president, declaring in a room to say, governments, these are also some of the strong instruments that we have and we need to boldly implement and give these percentages to women and youth as an immediate empowerment when it comes to market access.
All right.
Yeah.
Maria, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right.